How you guys doing today? All right, good. I love that video. I like that idea that we live on Earth one time, right? And it means we have one chance, maybe 80, 100 years, whatever it is, however long you live. Depending on if I get my cholesterol down, like the doctor says, I'm going to live to be like 140. So that means I've got another 110 years to figure out how to do something right with my life. And I was listening to the radio there. Basically, these guys on the radio were talking about how most people, and in fact most people who call themselves Christians, never get that. They never do. They had this study they were talking about where 60% of Christians, they did this long-term study over the course of like 5 or 10 years, and they found out 60% of Christians are not significantly different than people who describe themselves as not being Christians, except for one habit. They studied their things they ate, the way they spent their money, the things they did, how they spent their time, where they bought their clothes, like in-depth things about these people's lives. They found out there was only one way for 60% of these Christians. There was only one way, only one habit they had that was different than someone who said they weren't a Christian. Anyone want to guess what that was? The only one habit they had that was different. Who said that? They went to church more. Exactly. That was the only thing they could find for 60% of Christians. The only thing in their entire life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they did differently than someone that wasn't a Christian. 60% of Christians said the only thing they did different was that they woke up a little earlier on Sunday mornings and they went to church more. And then there was one more thing, which was people who describe themselves as Christians were more likely to go out to lunch on Sunday. Likely as a function of going to church. So really the only single habit that 60% of Christians had developed that was different than a non-Christian was going to church. That means that from about Sunday at 3 all the way through Saturday night, their life was unidentifiably the same as everyone else. That kind of scares me. It scares me to think about that because we don't think the rest of the world is going to notice that. We don't think that when we talk about how important it is to love people, and when you're a Christian and you talk about how you believe in God and you want to make the world a better place, you don't think everyone else is going to notice that you say that, but you don't do it. I mean, that's what we have is 60% of Christians have faith, but do not act on it. And this is not a teenager problem or a child problem or a grown-up problem or a grandparent problem. This is across the board. People who describe themselves as Christians have faith but don't have deeds. Don't have any actions in their life to back it up. And the Bible is pretty clear about what it says. It says that faith without deeds is dead. Faith without deeds is dead. If someone comes up to you and says, I'm hungry, I'm naked, I need clothes, I need shelter, I need food, and you say, well, I wish you well, good luck out there, and God bless, what does it mean? It means nothing. The life of a Christian isn't necessarily just about what you think or what you profess to believe. It's what you actually go out and do. And I was thinking about this week. How do so many people get caught up with this? And I think I've got maybe kind of an answer. And it goes back to how we understood God when we were little kids. Like, let's talk like 3, 4, 5-year-old kids. Anyone remember when you were that age? When I was that age, the regular Nintendo had just come out. We had 2 games called Mario and Duck Hunt. And that was the first time that I had been exposed to what this idea of God and heaven and hell was. And when you're 3 or 4 or 5, you don't think about faith life impacting the rest of your life. Faith and God is really about 2 things, heaven or hell. And when you're 3 or 4 or 5 years old, you understand God like this. Good people go to heaven. Bad people go to hell. You get a little bit older, let's say you get to be 6 or 7 or 8, and you start to understand a little bit about sin. We have all done bad stuff. You start to understand a little bit about Jesus and forgiveness, and you understand that we're forgiven. You get to be 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years old, and you go from good people and bad people to something that looks like this. People who believe in Jesus go to heaven. People who don't believe in Jesus go to hell. And that is your understanding of faith. I will remember always the time that I was first exposed to this. I was at a birthday party for the girl across the street, and she was a pastor's kid, and so all the kids that came to her birthday party were like others pastors' kids from this network, and then me, the unchurched neighbor. And so I'm running around, having a good time, and we're in the line for the piñata. And this kid looks at me in the piñata line at the 7-year-old birthday party and says, "Do you believe in Jesus?" And I remember at that time feeling like, way to put me on the spot, dude. I'm 7. And I said, yes. And he goes, "Then you're going to heaven. People that don't believe in Jesus go to hell. Give me the stick. I'm going to hit that donkey." I mean, that's exactly what happened. That was the first time that my life moved from beyond good people and bad people to believers and non-believers. And what happens with most people, at least 60% of Christians, I believe, is that they never understand the simple truth that faith has more to do with what happens when you die. Most people think that God and Jesus are only concerned about what happens to you when you die, and they are wrong. Having faith has never been about where you go when you die. It's about what you do while you live. I mean, you can reach in front of you and pull out a Bible, and if you start leafing through it and just turning to random passages, 9 out of 10 passages that you turn to are not going to be about heaven, and they're not going to be about hell. They're going to be about things that happen to us on earth, how we make friends, how we spend money, how we get married, how we serve people in need. The things that Jesus talked about 9 times out of 10 were not heaven and hell. They were earthly, worldly things. Because Jesus knew that we tend to get preoccupied with what happens when we die. And the simple answer is that we need to start figuring out how we're going to live. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans for a hope and a future." Guys, this verse means something. And what this verse means is that God has a plan for your life that starts now, or that started last week or a year ago. God has a plan for your life that starts long before you die. That means God wants you to do something. And what I would suggest to you today is that God has a calling, a plan for your life that usually is going to revolve around the things that you're passionate about, the things you're interested about, the things that you're good at, the things that you're gifted at. Because when God made you, he made you on purpose. I believe that. I think you believe that too. God made you on purpose. So, Christian, you're very tall. God has a plan for you to be very tall. I don't know what it is, but there's a reason that you're tall. And if you're not so tall, there's a reason for that too. So don't worry about it, Ian. And what I want you to know is that everything about your life that is a part of your life was put there on purpose by God. That means we get to figure out, what am I good at? How can I use these things to glorify God and to help people? We're going to figure out your calling. We're going to talk about today. You start to figure that out by thinking about, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? How can I use that to glorify God and to help other people? But Aaron, you don't know me, man. I'm not good at stuff. That's what I hear a lot. I'm not that good at stuff. Well, I'm good at some stuff, but it's all dumb stuff. Like stuff that God couldn't use. Like, so what if I'm really good at DDR? What's God going to do with that? I want to tell you a story about a girl named Amy Lambert who lives in South Carolina. I saw this on, I think it was on MTV News a couple years ago. Pretty crazy thing. It's always stuck with me. She was an 8th grader, and she started an after-school program for 2nd and 3rd graders where she would go to the school and bring her PlayStation, I guess, and some DDR pads, and she would play DDR with these 2nd and 3rd graders every day after school for an hour. She would show up with the PlayStation, the DDR pads, and some carrots and some apples, and they would eat healthy snacks, and they would dance on the DDR machine for an hour after school. Within 12 weeks, the teachers were saying that these kids had more positive energy during class, they had better interactions with their peers, that their grades had gone up for most of them after just 3 months of playing video games with this girl who happened to like this silly dancing game. You guys know what I'm talking about. After 1 year, one of the kids went to the doctor and was cleared of having type 2 diabetes. He had lost something like 25 pounds, and the only thing he'd done was play this game with this girl, and his type 2 diabetes, he didn't have it anymore because he was so much healthier from eating these healthy things and getting this exercise that his life was completely changed. And so when you're running around thinking, yeah, these things that I'm good at are useless, you've got to argue with about 25 kids from South Carolina who saw their lives changed by something that most of us, I would think was kind of dumb. That after-school program is happening right now in something like 7 or 8, or whenever it was on MTV News. It was in 7 or 8 other elementary schools. Because she took something she was good at, this silly video game. She took something she loved, kids, and she found a way to glorify God and to help other people using it. The only problem, or I guess there's two problems that I see with people who try to figure out what the calling is for their life. The first one is that they think they don't have a calling. Like, Aaron, you're a youth minister. God's called you to be a youth minister, but I'm only good at fixing stuff or driving cars or whatever it is that you think you're good at. And you might think that God's got a calling for my life and not yours. Absolutely not. God will use those things too. The second problem is that people don't think of a calling that is big enough. We tend to think about our calling as, what can I get done in, say, the next 2 weeks? God is calling me to do something that is at least small enough that I can get it done in less than 2 weeks, as if our calling is going to expire when the milk does. Here's the truth. Most of you are like under the age of 20, which means that you've got like another 70 years. If God gives you a huge goal, you've probably got a while to figure it out. I think about like Moses, and in your small groups today, you're going to read about some of these other people in the Bible who had these big callings. But I think about Moses, who was walking down the road one day, and God started talking to him as a burning bush and said, and I quote, "Moses, I have chosen you to free the entire nation of Israel from Pharaoh's reign. Not, I want you to get 2 people out of slavery. Not maybe get a couple families out of slavery. I want you to jailbreak tens of thousands of people, Moses. And here's the thing. We're not even going to be sneaky about it. And then I want you to take them and start this new country all the way over there." And Moses is like, God, how could we do this? How would this even be possible? Let's assume for a second that I managed to jailbreak tens of thousands of people from this entire country that hates us, by the way, without even being sneaky about it. It would take us at least 20 years to walk that far. Yeah, Moses, I know. And I'm going to give you 40 years to get there. Oh. God gave him power. God gave him the tools he needed. God surrounded him with people who had gifts that he didn't have. And then he gave him more than enough time to make it happen. So when you start thinking about a vision for your life, think about the things you're good at. Think about the people you can help. Think about a way that you can glorify God. And then make it a God-sized dream. In fact, what I would tell you to do is when you start thinking about this in your head, keep going right up until you get to the part where you think, this might actually be impossible. Because then you're going to be right in God's comfort zone. God loves doing impossible things. In fact, if you don't make your vision impossible, if you don't think of something impossible that you want to do, then you might be tempted to think, maybe I could do this by myself. But once you get to the point where you realize that there's no way I can do that, that's when you're going to start to pray and think about God and invite God into it. So here's what I want you to do over the course of the next couple of minutes. Tommy, would you put that cool new slide up? I want you to take a couple of minutes to think about what I've talked about, to pray about what your calling might be. And then I want you to fill in the blank. I am called to do what? And you can text, it's 2012. I am finally on board with text messages. You can just get out your phones right where you're sitting and text that to that number right there. Because I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know what you're thinking about, what's going on in your minds right now. So anyway, I'm going to shut up, think, pray. We're going to have a closing song. But make sure you get out your phone. Let us know what you're thinking about, guys.